What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Heated Shenanigans Podcast, the only podcast bringing you the heat each and every single week. I am your host, Scott, and joining me today is one of the most renowned men in professional wrestling, the Indy God, the Deathmatch King, Matt Cardona. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much for having me. I get a bunch of podcast requests, like a lot, believe it or not. I'm sure you believe it. And I don't have time to do them. I have my own podcast. I don't have time to do podcasts. But listen, I'll say you shot your shot. You offered me something I like, and that's a little money. And, hey, we're here right now. But look, otherwise I would have ignored the email. So you shot your shot. It worked. And I give you credit for that. I'm like, I like this guy shooting a shot.
I appreciate it, man. You don't know unless you ask.
That's right. I mean, because listen, I appreciate everyone who's out there with their podcast trying to build an audience. I don't have, listen, I have to schedule like when I shit in a day. That's how busy I am. I don't have time to do all these podcasts. I have my own podcast. But I appreciate the effort. And then when you threw that money line in there, it was a little interesting. So I give you credit for that.
I appreciate it.
Thinking outside the box.
Always trying to.
Yeah.
So, some that's been in the news recently, and I really wanted to get your thoughts on it. AEW doing their show over at Wembley Stadium coming up. A lot of controversy around it. A lot of people seem to be pretty butthurt about it. I think it's good for professional wrestling. It creates more opportunities, opens more doors. I was very curious to see your thoughts on it.
If you're truly a wrestling fan, I don't understand how you could root against a wrestler, a wrestling company. How can you do that? If you love this business, how could you root against pro wrestling? And AEW, they're doing something historic here. I think last time I checked, over 50,000 tickets sold for Wembley Stadium. That's fucking incredible. That's a win for pro wrestling. So if there's anybody who's hating on that, man, look at the mirror and hate yourself. Jesus Christ.
Pretty well put there, Matt. One thing I definitely was also very curious to get your thoughts on, as somebody that has been so decorated in professional wrestling, what would you say is the best match from a psychology standpoint that you have seen in a wrestling ring? And what I mean by that is the story that's being told in the ring.
I mean, that's a hard one. I have to really sit and think. But listen, I think wrestling is all about the audience and the connection you have with the audience. If you watch Rock Hogan WrestleMania 18 with the sound off, it's probably like a decent match, technically it's probably okay. You watch it with the sound on, fuck, it's the best match ever. Right? I think the moves, sure, they're important, especially now. The sport is evolving, the business is evolving. I'm not saying don't go do cool moves. I'm not saying that. But without that crowd response, without the crowd participation, you have nothing. So I'd argue that Rock Hogan might be one of the greatest matches of all time.
Let's say that's the first for me. I get a lot of answers to this question.
Yeah.
And I've never had a repeat because everybody has a different view,
Sure.
different enjoyment of professional wrestling.
Right.
So obviously you were one of the most talked about men in professional wrestling, especially on the independent scene. But a lot of people are very curious, Matt, about a return to WWE. If WWE were to call you right now,
Right.
and they made you an offer, and they let you have control over how you would be booked to come back, how would you like your return to be booked, and who would you like your first program to be with?
I see. That's very important. The two C's, cash and creative. Ever since I was released from WWE, my goal was never to get back there. It wasn't like, oh, what can I do to get WWE to notice me? But I'd be lying if I said I never wanted to have a WrestleMania moment again or a Wrestling Mask Regard again. Those are all things that come with being in WWE. I don't know off the top of my head what my first program would be back, but there's a lot of guys I'd like to get in the ring with. Cody Rhodes is one of them. And there's a story that is more than just a wrestling story, a true life story. And I think that's what makes wrestling the most special, is when there's that element of, realism behind it. Like, is this real? Is this not? When you have to question, I think that's when wrestling is at its best. So, and also he's at the top, right? So go right for the top dog.
Very good point. I mean, if you're gonna aim for the king, don't miss.
That's right. I mean, I'm not going to come back to just be on the show. I would never go back just to be back. I've been on the roster. I was there. Very fortunate for my time there. Spent over a decade there. But I did the whole just the guy on the roster thing. I have no desire to do that again. If I'm going to be there, I want to matter. And I think I've proved over the past 3 years that I'm more than capable of holding my own. And if I ever get that opportunity again, I think I'll prove that to the world.
100%. See, when you got released, like you bet on yourself and you turned yourself into one of the biggest names out there. Did you think at any point upon the release from WWE that was going to be in the future, that level for you was going to happen on the independent scene?
Absolutely. Did I know how I was going to get there? No. But I knew what I was capable of. I didn't quite know how I was going to get there. I knew once I got released, we were in the middle of this pandemic, not even the middle, the beginning of the pandemic. Whole world was shut down. Everything unknown, Couldn't even go take independent dates. There were a couple independents running social distance with the mat. I didn't want to do that. I waited about a year after getting released to start doing independents. In that time, I did the cup of coffee at AEW. I started with Impact. But once I started, I've really only been doing the indies for 2 years because that first year I didn't do any. And once I got started, even in the very beginning of my indie run, I wasn't quite sure who I was. I knew I was Matt Cardona. I knew I didn't want to just be Zack Ryder with a different name. But I didn't know who I was going to turn into, who I'd become. And the catchphrase "always ready," it's more than just a catchphrase. It's how I've lived my life. I've lived my career the past decade or so. I was always ready for any opportunity, and that opportunity came in the form of a death match against Nick Gage, GCW. My knee-jerk reaction was absolutely not. I don't want to wrestle this fucking drug addict criminal. But then I thought about it. I said, this could create some buzz. And I didn't know how much buzz it would create. It ended up changing my whole career, my whole life, because of that one match. And that was the catalyst I needed, where I'd go to indie shows and, I started getting a couple middle fingers in my face. Maybe like 25% of the crowd's booing me. Then, next week it's 50%, then 75%. Then no matter where I go, middle fingers in my face, old women, kids, men, women, it doesn't matter. Everybody hates Matt Cardona. So I found myself now, but it took a little bit, and now it's like, okay, even this year, you always got to evolve. You always got to change. I started this year, not worried, but questioning a little bit, okay, 2022 was incredible. Best year of my career. How do I top that? And things have just fallen into place, whether it be, I'm going to call myself the indie god, or wear this Indiana Jones gear. It was supposed to be for a one-off, like a one-time thing. The month or a couple months prior, where like Back to the Future stuff is like a one-off. But for some reason, this indie god stuff like took off. Not that it took off overnight, but I got enough feedback from it, good and bad, where I realized there's legs to this. I can run with this. I ended up meeting Steph DeLander, my new heater. Met her in Australia. We've been together for 2 months. It seems like we've been together for 2 years with the amount of shit we're putting out. So you just always got to be ready. That's my motto. Always ready.
I was saying the chemistry that the two of you have is just incredible. You and Steph. I had briefly got to see you at Squared Circle Expo.
Okay.
I had brought Victoria in, and we were standing watching the match, and she was just in awe. Just of where you're at right now and everything that you've been doing.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And it's funny because like I have never felt more confident in a ring, whether it be cutting promos, whether it be wrestling. I don't care who you put me in the ring with. Like, for instance, last week I wrestled Casey Navarro, up-and-comer, high flyer, fucking awesome wrestler. And I'm like, can I keep up with this kid? Well, fuck yeah, I can. And we tore the house down. We had a "This is awesome" chant before the bell, right as the bell rang, before we even locked up. I mean, that's a testament to two guys. Obviously there was a story behind it. We were telling it on social media, but that's the importance of social media, right? If we didn't tell that story on social media, it would have been a cold match. Nobody would have gave a shit. So you got to use these tools. Social media is such a big tool. And I'm glad that more people are using it these days, because when I started using it, in 2011, not that I got backlash from WWE for it, but they just didn't understand it at the time.
Let's say it was probably very foreign to them. It was something that,
well, it was new, right? Yeah, exactly, foreign.
Just hadn't been experimented with yet, and seen what the results could be.
Right.
Over the course of your career, Matt, what would you say is one lesson that you learned that you didn't expect to learn, and how did it change your career after you learned it?
That's a great question. What lesson did I expect to learn? Man. I think one thing that I have learned is that, especially in a high-level promotion like WWE and AEW, there's only so much you can control, right? And there's highs and lows. It's a fucking roller coaster ride. I mean, just throw my name into Google. You'll see it all. The highs and the lows. Winning the IC title at Mania, getting pushed off the stage in a wheelchair by Kane. I've done it all, right? But once I learned there's only so many things you can control, and if you control those things to the best of your ability, there's nothing more you can do. You can't, like, for instance, I told myself, your gear, right? No matter where you are on the show, whether you're main event at WrestleMania or fucking already in the ring on Sunday Night Heat, no one backstage can say you can't have great gear. You can't look like a star, right? Your physique. No one's going to say, you look a little too jacked this week. They can't control your physique and your attitude. If you come into work, if you're living your life happy and positive, no one can tell you you're smiling a little too much. You know what I'm saying? So if you can control those three things in like a WWE style environment, it's like, and just be ready for everything else, because you can bitch and moan about your spot in the show all day long. It's not going to change. You're just going to be more miserable. You're going to be bitching and moaning on the internet, bitching and moaning at work to the writers, bitching and moaning at home. What's going to get accomplished, right? Nothing. And I learned that because after the YouTube show, listen, I hate using the word buried. People say that, Zack Ryder was buried for starting his YouTube show. I don't want to say that. If anything, I blame myself for how everything went down. I could have went to Vince McMahon and knocked on his office door and been like, hey, what's going on here? Why am I getting pushed off the stage in a wheelchair? Why am I getting choke slammed off a loading dock? I don't get it. I'm busting my ass. I got this YouTube show. I got over on my own. I'm like one of the top merch sellers. What's going on? I didn't do that, so I blame myself. I never want to be one of those old timers who are like bitter and blame other people. Fuck that, right? So once I realized, like, hey, these are the things you can control them to the best of your abilities, things just, coincidence or not, just start, turning around for the better.
Something that we had mentioned GCW earlier, and there have been a lot of comparisons to what you've done for them and what Mick Foley did in ECW when he first arrived. I was curious about how you felt with those comparisons, being a game changer, if you will, for a company like GCW.
Listen, I'm honored by that comparison. That match with Nick Gage, that death match we talked about earlier, that night, it trended number one on Twitter over the UFC and the Olympics. Unreal. For what at the end of the day is really an independent show in Atlantic City, New Jersey, but because of social media, because of the internet and streaming, enough eyeballs were on it. And let's be honest, they wanted to see Zack Ryder get carved up by Nick Gage, right? They wanted to see it. So I definitely brought eyes to the product, but let's not fool ourselves. I've gained so much from them too. Without GCW, there would be no Deathmatch King. There would be no Indy guy. I don't want to say taken advantage of each other. I don't want to say we've used each other, but it's been a 50-50. I think anything that you've gained from me, I've gained from them. And I think originally I was portrayed as an outsider, But I hope, if any of the boys or girls in the locker room listen to this right now, I hope, they would say, yeah, no, he's one of us, because I feel like I'm part of GCW. I feel like I'm part of the growth. I'm very proud of the things that GCW has accomplished in the 2 years I've been there. It's almost been 2 years. It's crazy. GCW Homecoming 2021, I main evented against Nick Gage. 2022, I main evented with the wedding with Chelsea Green that Nick Gage ruined. And 2023, I don't know for sure, but I'm going to be in that fucking main event somehow. So it's crazy that, I'm like the Roman Reigns of GCW.
That's a pretty fair comparison as well.
That's right.
It's no secret you are a very avid collector of toys in professional wrestling. I was curious, through the entire mass collection you have, what is the holy grail of toys that you don't own yet?
That I don't own?
You don't own.
This is going to sound horrible to say, but there's really nothing out there that I don't have that I want. There's plenty of things that are out there that I don't have, but do I want them? I wouldn't say that. There is one figure. It's a prototype figure. I've talked about it before. It's this USA Lex Luger from the Hasbro company. It was an unreleased figure. It was supposed to come out like 94, 95. The company, they got rid of the WWE license. It didn't come out. But on eBay, someone had the hand-painted prototype of this Lex Luger. And I was in a bidding war, and I lost. Last second, I lost. And, it'd be nice to have that in my collection, the USA Luger. But at the end of the day, it's not like a real release, so it doesn't eat me up. And actually, now that we're talking about it, there is one that I do want. It's Jack specific. It's called like USA Warrior. When Ultimate Warrior signed his deal with Jack Specific in the early 2000s, he was smart enough to realize like the value of these collectibles. So in his deal, he was able to get, for instance, like a 1 of 5, where only there's 5 of them in the world, and he got them, and he was able to sell them on his own. So there's I believe it's 1 of 5 Ultimate Warrior, where he's all like in this red, white, and blue. That's one that I do not have. But the last time I was even considering buying it, I believe it was like $12,000. So it's pretty nuts.
Whew.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
Just a
little
little
pocket
bit.
change.
Yeah.
What would you say, and this I'm incredibly curious to get your answer on, what would you say is one insult that you got that you actually viewed as a compliment?
Insult? Huh. Well, I don't know if it's an insult, but a lot of, when I first got to the Indies and I was still, as this heel, right? Even though I think I'm a babyface, but portraying myself as a superstar like I would in WWE. For instance, when I won the GCW title, the world title, I renamed it the Universal title, and I think maybe to spin the question a little bit, I was saying things like WWE was my developmental. And I think a lot of people thought that was like a dig at WWE or an insult towards them, but it wasn't. Because I believe that WWE set me up for this run right now. It taught me all the things that I need to know to be the number one guy on the Indies. So if anybody says like, oh, he's just an ex-WWE guy, I'm fucking proud of that. I was there for over a decade, did a lot of fucking cool things. I believe I changed the business with Z True Long Island Story. I maybe when I die, I'll finally get credit for it. But, I'm not insulted by that ex-WWE guy. And you never know. Maybe one day I will end my career there. I always thought I would be a WWE lifer, but I needed to get released. I needed to go away. It needed to happen, and it did. And now look, 2022, independent wrestler. I don't care. I've said this before. I don't care how you define success, whether it be by accolades, by money, or by happiness. No matter how you define it, 2022 was the most successful year in my pro wrestling career. And that's it. And I'm proud of that, being on the independents, that I was able to have more fun, make more money, and accomplish, not that it fucking matters, the PWI 500, but fuck, number 13. The only numbers that matter are number 1 and number 13. And I was number 13 over all your favorites, like Kenny Omega. I beat him. Seth Rollins, I beat him. So if you want to use those BS accolades, then fuck, let's use them.
Fair enough. Before we go and close this out, Matt, I want to give you the opportunity to promote anything you got coming up. How can promoters reach out to you to book you to come win their world championships and add to your collection?
Oh, well, guys, if you're going to book me, please don't put me in a title match. I have too many titles. I have way too many. Listen, I'll work anybody you want. Please, not your champion. Please, fuck. I literally, tomorrow, I have to go, like, bring my bag in, my suitcase to get fixed because it's like all the zippers are broken because it weighs too much from all these goddamn belts. But if you want to book me, go to my email, bookmattcardona@gmail.com. I have my own toy line, Major Bendies. Go to majorpodmerch.com. I got a bunch here. I'll plug it. I don't know if we're doing video here, but we got a little Joey Janela. We got a little Joey Janela available right now. Majorpodmerch.com. Look at this. We have Doc Gallows available in the latest set. Majorpodmerch.com. Oh, look at it. It's his partner, the Machine Gun, Carl Anderson, available now. Majorpodmerch.com. We're not done. We got the non-bloody Joey Janela, a little variant there. We have the British Bulldog, Davey Boy Smith, in his Heart Foundation vest. And last but not least, we got fucking Rock and Roll Express himself, Ricky Morton. So, yeah, it's cool to have this toy line. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but, you know, at the end of the day, oh, man, life is so hard. I'm wrestling in little underwear and talking about toys and making toys. Ooh. Life is so rough, you know what I'm saying? So I'm living the dream. I appreciate all the support from all the fans, all the customers who are buying the product. And, of course, I have the Major Wrestling Fair podcast, drops every Friday. Listen, we can fill another half hour just my plug. So if you have any more questions, I'll take the questions. I can be plugging forever. Just go to my social media. You'll find me.
All right, well, we'll go and wrap this up here, guys. Again, I want to thank Matt Cardona for taking time from his incredibly busy schedule to do this episode with us. It does mean a tremendous amount to us and our listeners.
Hey, man, this is great. Thank you for having me. Like I said, you had the balls to shoot your shot, so I respect that. I had to do it. It's been great, and maybe we'll do it again sometime.
Oh, absolutely. Well, guys, everybody take care out there, and we will see you on the next episode of Heated Shenanigans Podcast.